you introduce your book, Chasing Proof and Finding Faith, with this concept that certainty is a bit elusive. That when you're coming to a decision, like you came to a decision, not only intellectually, but personally, that even there as a very erudite scientist who's chasing proof, you want
Yeah.
to know that there's something um, about reality and the limitation of our own humanity that in some ways there's no way to absolutely know everything and be incredibly certain. I wonder if you could speak to that for just a minute about your decision making
Mhm.
with regard to the God's existence and the truth of Christianity and who Jesus is and all of that with regard to this concept, this elusive concept of, well, I have to know for certain or knowledge, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is something that I understand better now, having, walked the journey of faith and the journey of science for a number of years. I think kind of the problem, the mistake I made was maybe coming into this whole question. And when I started to realize that this question matters: is there a God? Is Christianity true? What is true about the world? What is the meaning and purpose of life? I think I had this idea that coming in, like, I need to find the answer, the proof, right? The idea, like, I need to be able to convince myself with absolute certainty that this is true or that that's true. Um, but what I came to realize, and what I've come to realize even more, is that I think that sort of certainty just doesn't really exist in any area of human knowledge, and that's true of science as well. That really what we get in science and what you get in I think any area of thought, whether that's theology or philosophy or anything, is that there's always going to be some amount of uncertainty. There's always some, like, leap of faith, if you will, that needs to be made between what you believe and how you're going to live. That there's lots of questions that deciding, like, who to marry or something, right? That you can't know for certain that this is the right person, but you kind of take the data that you have, you take the knowledge that you have, and you try to make the decision that makes the most sense. And then you have to make that, at some point you have to make that leap. The same thing is true, with my science. When I write a paper, um, there's oftentimes these arguments that rely on some assumptions, and I don't know for certain if those are right. But you try to make the most reasonable case you can, and then you got to go with it, and then you try to defend it. That's just, I think, how sort of life works, and I guess that's where in that moment of choosing faith, um, that I guess what I came to the conclusion that the bridge of faith that I built was big enough, and I could make that leap the rest of the way. That there was still, as I say, there were still these questions. I didn't, like, have a perfect answer to why does a good God allow bad things to happen to people. And there are still questions to this day. Things mysteries about God and about faith that I wish I understood better. What really the whole process taught me is that there isn't really an answer to these big questions that doesn't rely on some level of faith. That I'd grown up adopting this worldview, sort of thinking that this is just self-evidently true. And once I started to question it, I realized, actually, this doesn't stand up to a lot of the thoughts that I've brought to the table don't necessarily stand up to scrutiny either. There isn't sort of a null hypothesis. There isn't an obviously correct answer to all of these big questions. And um, and I think what I decided after that polygraph is that the combination of all I'd been learning, along with now my own personal experience of of recognizing my own brokenness and my own need for forgiveness and grace, that Christianity was just close enough. It made the most sense. It was the thing that basically I couldn't justify living any other way. or believing any other thing. And so that's where I guess I'd say I found enough certainty. I found enough certainty to make that decision.